Meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Present.
Bob Fiedler,
Present.
Dan Hansen,
I'm here.
Kathy Lee,
Present.
Shelley Tomczyk.
Okay, next is approval of minutes. Anyone have any additions or corrections to the minutes from January 6th? If not, they will stand approved as printed. Moving on to public comment. Anyone wishing to make public comment? Anyone for public comment? Last time, public comment. Okay, moving on to business items, financial report. Ken?
The financial report is in your packet. I'd be happy to entertain any questions, but all I have to say is the same thing I say every month. Revenues are still coming in, wrapping up year end, expenses are within budget. We'll finish the year in the black. So I don't have any issues with the budget. Everything's looking good, so.
Okay, any questions for Ken? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to circuit court update. We're rolling along here.
We are rolling along. Just a few items of information. First, we did have our warrant return day a couple of weeks ago. We learned some things. I think we had a total of 5 people show up and take care of their warrants. But we're planning another one later in the spring, early summer. We're going to try some different approaches to getting the word out. I think we're not convinced that putting it on the county's Facebook is maybe the most effective way to reach out to that clientele or that population who has warrants out there. So the Child Support Office was very proactive in terms of how they notified folks. So we're going to try some different approaches to get people in, but we took care of 5 cases that otherwise would have been out there and subject potentially to arrest. Unfortunately, one of those people also had a felony warrant out of Minnesota, so that became a little challenging when we know that they have a warrant from another jurisdiction, but with the cooperation of the sheriff and the DA, we were able even to deal with that case and resolve their case in St. Croix and then process them in a way that got them to Minnesota. We certainly are aware regarding the decision that was made Tuesday regarding the bonding. And all I can say is from the court standpoint, we will continue not to weigh in on policy decisions, but we'll continue to work with Mr. Witt and the county clerk and the sheriff and district administration regarding what we still have as immediate space and security needs, and then provide information as asked regarding what our future looks like. So we'll continue to survive, I guess is the best word. We're watching some legislation. I kind of mentioned it at the last meeting. Given the events in Waukesha and Milwaukee County, there is being fast-tracked through the legislature a number of bills dealing with bail. To show you how fast-tracked they are, a bill was introduced on a Monday, and by Wednesday they were having hearings already, which is kind of unheard of, but I think it indicates at least the attitude regarding that particular issue. One of those bills would require that if someone has a prior felony conviction or prior violent misdemeanor conviction, we would be required to set cash bail of $10,000 on any new crimes. What that does to our jail population, we haven't projected, but I can tell you that a large percentage of people who are charged generally have prior convictions, and so our discretion again to consider something other than high cash may be eliminated under that legislation. There's also a bill pending that would likewise impact potentially if someone is on probation and commits a new crime. There's a bill that says the department shall revoke as opposed to may revoke or may try some other alternative to revocation. If that happens, it's going to impact certainly on the sheriff's department relative to the jail and their population. So we're watching those bills. There's a constitutional amendment that's likewise going through the legislature that would require action in 2 successive sessions of the legislature and then be put to public vote. That would deal with these bail issues as well. So there's a lot happening in the legislature. It may have an impact on the courts. It may have an impact on the sheriff as well as the jail, but at this point, we don't know what the outcome will be. And then finally, we received word last week that the Behavioral Health is assigning a former Department of Corrections probation agent. In my recollection, she has 25 to 30 years of experience in that field, is now joining Behavioral Health, is going to be assigned to the Government Center to deal with mental health and AODA issues in the criminal justice arena. So I know of her. We haven't met her yet, but I know she plans on meeting with all the judges to talk about how we can triage those cases where there is a chronic mental health or AODA issue and provide services hopefully up front or get them lined up for services. So we look forward to that. And then finally, last week I tried my first ever criminal jury trial with a defendant who refused to come up from the jail. That was an experience, but I have to thank the sheriff, court security, Christy and her staff for coordinating that particular effort, as it was first impression for all of us with a fellow who refused to come up. We live streamed the proceedings to him in the jail, but that was a first. That's my report.
Thanks for that. I'm excited about the behavioral health piece, and it would be great to meet
Yeah,
her.
we're looking
Yeah.
forward because, again, the need hasn't gone away.
Right. Any questions for Judge? Bob, did you have any questions?
I did not, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to Clerk of Court staffing matters. Christy. I'm going to start it with a laugh. Okay. So I last reported to you back in September. At that time, we had 4 resignations and 1 new hire. Since that time, we've had a total of about 35 to 40 applicants total for those open positions. About half of them, about 21 of them, were qualified for interviews. 7 of them declined interviews. We interviewed 13. 10 offers were made. 3 offers were accepted. That's all, total. Also, in the meantime, I've had 3 more resignations. And one of those resignations was one of the new hires from July. So with the new position that was awarded to us, approved by the county board, that was supposed to start in January 1, I have 5 open positions right now. My total administrative staff is 14, so that's a serious hit. Many different reasons were given. Money was one of them, counter offers, other opportunities, life changes. It kind of runs the gamut. So we met with the judges in January to discuss some options. Where are our biggest needs? What are the critical issues? Obviously, covering court is the biggest issue. That's, on most given days, that's 6 clerks out of the office. I only have 9 clerks total, so that leaves 3 people in the office, 2 of which are financial people, so they're not really in court that much, but they understand the process. So we've discussed multiple options, like I said, working with Rebecca, the Register and Probate, to get her staff, circuit court staff, the judicial assistants. So we're kind of working through that, doing some trainings to get them familiar with things that we feel are our biggest needs. I also have one of my staff is going on maternity leave any time between now and Valentine's Day, and my office manager has been on medical leave since the beginning of November. Okay, that's the bad news. Good news, like I said, we've been working with the judges and Rebecca to try to figure out how to fill holes. People from multiple departments have offered help, which is greatly appreciated. People that I didn't even expect say, hey, if you need something, let me know. So how that looks, we're still trying to work through it.
But again, we appreciate everyone's help and assistance. My staff have been doing 2, 3, 4 jobs overtime. I have two of our former employees are working remotely as many hours as they can to help us. I guess that's about where we're at right now.
I'll join in. Christy puts the best spin on. This is not sustainable. She has basically, with the maternity leave, in terms of staff that support the courts as well as do the work of the clerk of court's office, because I'm going to exclude the 2 financial clerks, she'll be at 50%. 50% staff. It's not sustainable, and the courts have agreed that we're going to have some of our staff help out, but we've said that's a 2-month window. We can't give up our responsibilities and what we're expected to do. Things that we're doing, we're going to limit public access to her office. So that's going to impact on the public because we can't, again, man a front window when we don't have people in court. We're cutting jury trials. I just went through the list for February and March, and we're eliminating all jury trials other than cases where we have victim issues or we have public safety issues. So other jury trials, we're notifying attorneys, your cases are being rescheduled, and so we'll see you maybe late summer next fall. We are looking at other alternatives to try to help out. But as I said, this is not sustainable. We have to find a solution to attract and retain. As Christy said, the people are leaving. My courtroom clerk left because she lives in Clear Lake and got a job in Balsam Lake and saved herself an hour drive time. We had another person who jumped the river and is going to work in Washington County. We had another person who, more in line with their career goals, left to start another position with restorative justice in River Falls, which was more their career track. So they're not leaving because of dissatisfaction, they're leaving because they have these other opportunities, but we're not attracting people to fill these positions. And Christy said, other departments are offering to help. We're not widget makers, and so you can't just plug somebody in and say, okay, can you do this for a day? Can you do this for a couple of hours? These are specialized technical positions, and I don't know what the training curve is, Christy, but my sense is it takes up to 6 months to get somebody fully trained in a position to do their job. So she's the glass half full. I'm glass half empty at this point, which is unusual for this guy because I generally try to find the best I can in any situation, but we're in crisis and we don't have any solutions, and the courts will help as much as we can. But for each person we free up to help in the clerk's office, that means they're not doing something that's expected of them in our office. So it's robbing Peter to pay Paul, and will help, but limiting access to the public, these are things, again, that just we have to find a solution. And I don't have a solution, unfortunately.
Okay, Dan.
Can we find some money to offer for hiring and retention bonuses? Is there ARPA funds available, or can we just shake something out of the reserve fund?
And I was thinking that too, just because you don't want the people that are left, because of these working conditions, to just bail, because it's not sustainable, you're correct. And they're just going to be so frustrated that they'll depart as well, which would make the problem worse.
They're doing great right now, but I'm already hearing rumblings of how much longer do we need to do this?
Right.
And I've worked with HR, I've worked with Ken to try to figure out some other alternatives, and I'm not finding very many.
Well, and Christy shared, she had 2 call in this morning, 2 courtroom clerks that are sick. So we're now down to 4 available staff to man 6 courts.
To Dan's
4
question.
judges, 2 court commissioners.
I understand that the downside is that we set a precedent for other departments, and that we're looking at, a lot of departments that are short-staffed and think that they're short-staffed, but we have an obligation to the public, and if we're closing the window and people can't access the clerk of court to get their questions answered. And a lot of people go up there in personal crisis and need to have somebody to answer the questions. It's the first stop is a clerk's window. It's not the kind of service that I personally want to provide to the public. As a supervisor, I want the public to be served at every window, every aspect of interface with the county government. And that, it chills me that we're not able to offer service when they come up to court. So can we discuss making a extraordinary measure if we need to hire somebody? Go to Washington County and recruit people as they're on their way in the building to go to work.
Yeah, I don't believe money is our limitation here. I mean, we've been given a lot of resources. Nothing's been allocated specifically for what you're requesting, but it's not for a lack of cash availability. I don't know, though, that bonuses are necessarily the right route here. I think the issues in the clerk of court's office is market competition. And so a one-time bonus is great, but after they get their bonus check, they can leave the next day and then go make more every week somewhere else. So we really have to address the market competition with their base wage rate, not a one-time bonus. I just wanted to make sure I made that clear for you guys.
And one thing, excuse if I may, one thing that, we can't quite figure out is, Pierce County, which is Ellsworth. I know when Christie talked to them in the fall, they would have 2 openings and 25 applicants. Dunn County, similar, 1 opening, 25 applicants. We have an opening and we have 4, and anecdotally, Christie shared with me that one of the more recent applicants, and with all due respect to folks who man the lunch lines in our schools, it was a lunch lady from Colfax who was interested with no background or experience, but, saw a posting and was making more as the lunch lady in Colfax than what we were able to offer in the clerk of court's office. I heard yesterday that the new distribution center for Amazon and Woodbury is paying $21 an hour starting. That's our market across the river, and Washington County is our market. Ellsworth, Menominee are not our market. We're competing with those who can get in their car and drive 15 minutes and make whatever they're making in Ramsey or Hennepin or Washington counties. That's our market, and so to do a study of Wisconsin, I just don't think is a realistic way to approach what is needed in that office. So again, we can hobble along, but as I said, the courts will do what we can through March, but then I can't cancel jury trials. And again, as the supervisor said, that's public service. I mean, that's bringing people to justice or civil cases or anything else. And so I'll make the cuts now, and we'll free up staff now, but that's not sustainable.
I'm looking at you, Ken. So the bonuses aren't an appropriate way. I agree with your assessment there. So what is our base wage? Clearly we're making, the minimum for any county employee is 15.
Yeah, and this department's starting in the low 20s.
Okay.
173 is starting wage
Yeah.
for a court clerk. Right now, the majority of my staff have between 5 and 7 years experience. They're making between $21.79 and $23.45 an hour.
And so the upper end of the range, there's capacity. And so she does have a lot of staff that are clustered on that lower end of the range. And so I think part of the issue Christie has is she doesn't want to bring in somebody with no experience, legal experience, and pay them more than
Right.
people that have worked here for 5 years.
That's bad for morale, yeah.
Yep. So, I mean, that's where I think the competition issue is. I think the position range of steps has the capacity to attain people for that role, but we do have a limited pool also that we're drawing. And we see that across all positions, though. That is not unique just to Christie.
You had a question?
Do they have a sense that they have career progression? Or does it feel like a dead-end job for them? And is there a way that we can improve that if that's the case?
Well, what I did in the past was I created a secondary, like a higher step. We always had the court clerk 1 position. I had created a court clerk 2 position, so what the qualifications are is you have to be a staff member, a clerk of court staff member for 4 years, and then you also have to achieve at least, in 3 separate divisions within the clerk of court office, you have to have expertise knowledge. So most of my staff are able to accomplish that as long as they get here for 4 years. What I'm thinking about doing now is because of this like fast tracking way I've had to train staff in the last year, to reduce from 4 years down to maybe 2 or 3, and then, but they're getting, trust me, the 3 divisions of expertise and at a lot quicker pace. So after that, there really isn't anything else further. The financial people don't really have anything other than their annual step increases. You know, we do have 3 supervisory positions, but again, we're all long-term employees. Whether or not any of us will be leaving anytime soon, you know, it's hard to say. What happens most times, and has happened through, you know, my 25-plus years of being here, is people tend to move either to the judicial assistant's office, they move to the DA's office, they move to corp counsel, or they move on to another county. You know, we call them experts. When we move them up to clerk 2s, you know, they're given certain expectations, but beyond that, there really isn't anything. So that's kind of how that's been built.
Yeah, actually, the model that Christie has is one that I'm going to try to replicate in other parts of the county, but that court clerk 1 with 4 years experience, 3 areas of expertise, moves to a court clerk 2, moves up to a higher grade, so they get an increase, and then they have more range. And then she does have the supervisory positions, which are long-term career goals for those people within the department. So I don't necessarily think that that structure is too bad. I actually think that she has a good model there in her department.
Yeah, Shelley.
So I'm hearing that part of the issue is getting people into the door. I wonder if there's something, I mean, I know that the way that we get applicants is through, you know, just the job listing, but I wonder if there's a way that like Adam can kind of highlight what job openings are available and maybe, I mean, I don't want to throw this out as the only idea, but if he could just do like a little short clip on the county website of like, hey, this is generally what a court clerk does or something along those lines, then maybe that will garner a little more interest. Just kind of throwing out potentials.
Yeah, we've challenged our talent acquisition specialists to really come up with some different ways of looking at it. You know, looking at other recruitments that we're doing, that people would actually have some peripheral qualifications for this and saying, hey, did you think about applying for this position? You know, really trying to look at every possible avenue of promoting and encouraging people to apply.
We also have, I think Adam did put something at one point on the Facebook page or whatever to kind of highlight, but now we're starting to look at technical, reaching out directly to tech schools. I think they reached out to some in Wisconsin, and now I've suggested you need to also target Minnesota schools, because the majority of the applicants that we're getting are coming from Minnesota and have attended those programs, so.
That's what I was going to suggest too, is, and I know you're getting somebody just out of school, but you could
Right.
put them on the track though.
Exactly.
And this isn't a position that, or maybe it is, I mean, for the short term, until we can really build up that talent pool, is this something you can hire temporary help for? Like, it's not, you're like shaking your head. I know it's specialized, so I was grasping at straws.
Yeah, and that's been offered, I mean.
I suggested it too.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's-
I know.
Yeah,
Okay, never mind.
yeah, it's,
I feel helpless. I don't know what to say, except that we have to, clearly this is a need. if you have any other ideas. Bob, I don't know. Ooh. Go ahead.
Even if a temp was a legal professional, a paralegal, it would be terribly expensive, but I mean, if we had only 2 people in the office and we needed to pull somebody in, would that still be not acceptable?
Their responsibilities would have to be extremely limited. It's because then it's also, they have to, get CCAP training, and, I mean, answering phones and trying to direct people, that's one thing, but the actual nuts and bolts, sitting in a courtroom clerking, that would be too much. The software alone, judge said 6 months, it's closer to a year, to be really as knowledgeable as you can be, but
I think the 6-month training timeframe that, Judge Needham had talked about is why that's a really difficult solution. So I guess my recommendation, based upon the input I was hearing from you, Supervisor Hanson, would be to take a look at the current staffing compensation to create capacity within that progression of the steps within the position, because I think there's capacity within the range, so that Christie could offer higher starting rates, because that's the only way you're going to attract additional talent is more money.
Yes.
So instead of creating the internal problem, that's the solution I have, is throw money at it. But
Supervisor Burning.
So doesn't each municipality have their own court as well, a municipal court, and do they have clerks that work there part-time? And then with that being said, what is the probability of looking at doing some sort of intra county within the municipalities and utilizing a clerk that can help the county and then can also do their municipal clerk work, but then also maybe expanding it to inter-county? And if we're able to utilize remote workers, why can't we work with Dunn County or Pierce County or whoever, and then we have a network of people, so that when you guys are inundated, and I realize that it's not like you guys go like, do we have any court cases this week? I realize but the work can ebb and flow at times, and just looking at spreading out that workload possibly and seeing if other counties or municipalities can help out. So with that being said, tell me if I'm crazy, but.
No, you're not crazy.
Thank you.
I'm trying to recall, I think we have 5, maybe 6 active municipal courts in the county. Those are positions created by the municipality. Their employees are employed by the municipality. I think most of them are part-time at best, a couple of hours a week, because the nature of those courts is so restricted in terms of what they do. None of those courts are aligned with CCAP, so they're not part of the state court system in terms of infrastructure or technology. So they have no training or experience or background in our technology or record keeping, and they deal with such a finite case type, forfeitures and ordinances. But the best I can tell you is we did have one of our clerks go to work for North Hudson. So it's, again, they siphoned off a really qualified person to go work for them. But to answer your question, most of our municipal courts are part-time at best. And the judges, including their clerks, and the case types, as well as the technology that they use, is 10% of what we do. So now, in terms of other counties, I don't know how that would work again in terms of asking Dunn to provide some assistance, or Pierce or Polk, because we have so many layers of administration and HR and all those other things. Yeah, yeah.
So I think we're looking at it, I think you're taking what I'm saying backwards. And what I'm saying is, what if we paid staff more, brought talent in, and then we contracted out that way? And that way we have the staff we need. And it's just looking at utilizing rather than onesie twosies. I mean, some of the biggest issues we have is hiring part-time people. That same problem probably is with municipalities in this area in some cases. So if we carry the staff, the municipality or whomever can contract with us, and now we have that void filled, and it's not so like we're just trying to get that one or two here, and they're trying to get one or two halves here, and now we have two holes. And if we need to ramp up a little bit because everyone's busy at the same time, then we do that. And if we scale back, you know, I mean, I'm throwing things out there because I'm thinking about all the business visits I did last week in my district, and what I'm hearing, and it's like I'm almost getting numb to it, is we can't operate a night shift. We can't operate this welding division. We can't operate this particular area. So, and I'm not saying I'm getting numb to it, but it's like there's got to be more to this than there's more to it than just the court system, but obviously a very important piece. So I'm just thinking outside the box for you guys and looking at how can we team up with more entities and maybe have just one area of talent to draw from rather than 30 some different areas of talent that we need to try to grab a small sliver of persons. So I think that's more what I was talking about rather than us trying to get them to do what we need. They use us. And obviously that would take some time to develop that, but I think it's worth an exploration, but
It could be a
It's totally up to you
longer-term
guys.
solution. I mean, I don't know. What do you recommend, Ken, in terms of focusing on that idea? Do we need, in the step compensation piece, do we need a motion for that?
Yeah, you're not allowed to make a motion because it's not a voting agenda item. on the
Okay,
agenda.
correct. So
But-
never mind. Janet was like, don't go off script. Okay, so.
But I can put a
and I
resolution
got-
together.
I didn't do it. I asked before I did it.
Yeah, the proper committee of jurisdiction for that would be the administration committee,
Okay.
anything compensation. But I can put something together, working with Christie. We can get that in front of the next admin meeting.
Okay.
And hit the March County Board.
And then I think your idea is one to explore longer term. Go ahead. Yep.
I would be willing to lead up a subcommittee or something that could explore these options, or whoever you would feel would be warranted to be on something like that. But I think this sounds like something we need to start looking at sooner than later to solve the issues that you're having, because I can understand burnout.
And the only thing, Supervisor, I can say is, at least for court reporters, the state has looked at that type of option, because we now have a pool of court reporters that are sitting in Madison that apparently are available to any one of us to zoom into. And so the state has kind of said, well, for court reporters, this is an option now that we're going to try. We haven't used it in St. Croix, but I know some of our other smaller counties that are in worse shape than we are with court reporters. So they have a pool of court reporters sitting in Madison that can click into any courtroom in the state and be able to help take the record. So with technology and other options, maybe pooling, clerks, things like that, may be something to explore. Because as you said, this isn't unique to St. Croix, and it's not unique just to this population. I know the sheriff had his issues for months, and now it's just shifting down to this department. So,
Supervisor Hanson?
Ken, do you think it would be possible, practical, because of the timing and where we are in the term, to coordinate with Supervisor Long and call a special meeting of the administration committee before the next county board meeting, so that we could put a resolution in front of the county board in our last term?
Your last meeting, yeah.
Yeah, admin is on February 15th.
Egg on my face.
Consider it done, Supervisor
Okay,
Hanson.
good.
Yeah, not in your face, you got it done.
Boom. Okay,
Campaign issue.
all right. I think any other comments, or can we move on? Okay.
Well, I hate following that conversation. I had a very different update yesterday than I do this morning. This morning I did receive a resignation from my primary pretrial case manager. I've had her for 3 months, and I can say that she's been an asset to the development of where I think I'd like to go with pretrial services. Obviously, a good bit, as Judge alluded to, rests on what happens in Madison, but just as case management as a whole in that department. So I also look forward to connecting with the new behavioral health person in this interim too, for sure. But the good news is that asset that I've had in my program for just a short time is not leaving this county. So she is going over to fulfill her dream as a juvenile, I don't know the full title, but the juvenile caseworker that I believe we lost just a few months ago. So a great asset to that work, and I will miss her greatly. But it still puts me on and keeps me on the path of where I'm going and where I'd like to see pretrial services in the county and certainly in my department. I think that St. Croix County is one of the best counties in this state, and we can emulate, if not better, Dane County, La Crosse County, and anybody else. But a good bit, again, depends on what happens in Madison. So the focus for February, obviously, I have an entire new staff with new programs in that. We have a new treatment court coordinator and a caseworker, so we're going to be focusing February on training, cross-training departmentally, and specific training for staff. The lead staff for each of the programs I will be sitting down with and focusing on their kind of high-level goals where they see things, and also on budget and kind of making sure we're all on the same page with that, and establishing the clarity between the whole department. For March, my commitment to the PP&J has always been, since I walked in the door, a data presentation of the full department, but specifically for pretrial work. My intention is to, and I talked with Ken and with Bob, to present quarterly a data presentation on that. And that should align with the singular goal that I have committed to Ken for a data presentation of the work that my department does, and how that work starts from the beginning of the system and works through the judges and whatever. So those are the goals. In the CJCC, Judge Waterman is the chair of the Criminal Justice Subcommittee, and he and I and Shelby Hilton met, and we will be, again, this depends on what happens at the state level, but working toward what we want to see and do as a whole, as a county, as a system for pretrial work on. So that is my update. You can plan for March to hopefully have some semblance of a new case manager, but also that data presentation. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Susan? Okay, moving on to Patty, medical examiner's report.
Good morning, everybody. For us, for our update, we are working with St. Kate's with the intern. Sydney is a Hudson High School grad. She is going to get her degree in public health. She is hoping to take the pathology assistance program. I was her mentor about 7 years ago, so it's kind of exciting to have her back in the loop. So she is just starting on her project now. It's going to be a data-driven project on all the deaths of 2000 and 21, and we're looking at the connection between rural deaths and access to services. So it should be, from a public health perspective, it should give us a lot of information. We've made it to phase 2 in the UW intern program. It's looking pretty good, like we'll get that intern, that there is internship that is paid through a grant, 40-hour-a-week, 6-week person will be coming to our office if we make it to phase 3. So that also is exciting to really start getting our data and everything in line. Capacity continues to be a huge issue. Our cooler has been overflowing. We've had two weekends now where we have had more decedents than we have had space. So we're continually working with that there. I just looked at my case log this morning. We're already at 100 cases for the year. It's February 3rd. We're looking at, 3 deaths a day now in St. Croix County. So capacity is going to be an issue. We have 2 funeral homes that do about 60% of all of our work, and then about 30+% is done by outside funeral homes, either smaller ones within St. Croix County, surrounding St. Croix County, or Minnesota. One of our biggest providers is now doing a 5 to 7 day wait time before they meet with families. This lies where our capacity problems are. Some of our decedents are at home now after they've expired 12 hours or more. So this is causing a huge backup problem, why we need more room for our coolers. Livery services coming from Minnesota to Wisconsin is about a 15-hour wait now because there are so many deaths everywhere. One of the crematoriums in St. Paul, they have 8 retorts or 8 crematoriums running 24 hours a day, and they can't keep up. So the aging generation is here. This is an issue that is going to continue to impact us for the foreseeable future. We are doing everything we can to make sure that all our decedents' remains are treated with dignity and respect, and we are doing everything we can to keep the flow going. But we are looking at a walk-in cooler, and we are going to need one soon. So, and then, of course, this week, our cooler that we had a failure. So facilities was able to get that up and going. It wasn't the condenser, it was a relay switch, so it wasn't too bad. But luckily, our cooler does have an alarm system, and we're able to monitor it. But our cooler is really what is saving us as far as not being that kind of PR nightmare that we're seeing in other communities where bodies are stacking up, and that's the reality of our aging population. So we are looking to redo a job description for investigators and hire 2 more investigators, which isn't going to cost us any more money the way that our pay scale is worked out, but I am very worried about burnout. We need to really kind of spread it out, like I was talking to the sheriff yesterday. I mean, the amount of, we are death investigators, but when I look at law enforcement, the amount of at-home deaths that our law enforcement is going to is exhausting. It's emotionally exhausting. It's exhausting for the funeral homes. It's exhausting for everybody that is on the last responder side of life. And figuring out how to build our capacity at the medical examiner's office is going to be essential as we move forward. So, and the CAT scan project is ongoing. So we're very excited.
Thanks for the update. I was going to ask you about the CAT scan, so.
We're just waiting. I think we're going to, Jim said we're going to start taking bids in the next couple weeks, so
Okay.
Should be good.
Any questions for medical examiner? Hey, Shelley.
Madam Chairman?
Yep. hold on. We'll get to you in a sec. Shelley had a question.
I just got a bid yesterday. I don't know, Ken, if you want to, that's a machine,
What was the price, 16 or 19?
18,000.
18, yeah, it was somewhere right in that range. So Jim did put together a bid for us on the cooler. Based upon those dimensions, I don't know how many you could fit in there. Have you determined that?
I'm thinking that we could do 3 up, both sides, so we could, and then carts in the middle, we could house 10, and then with our other 3 up, we would have 13. So I think that would really be good for what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. So timing-wise, right now, it's not in the KIP. We can add it into the KIP as a 2023 project, or at some point, we could amend the KIP for 2022 if necessary. It's a very small dollar project in scope of the entire KIP. So really, we'll talk with Jim about timing for when he could even get it. I mean, because it may not be till 23 anyways with back-ordered items. And then we'll talk with Patty about her needs and figure out what that timing needs to be.
Supervisor Fiedler.
Just a follow-up on our January meeting, we had raised the topic of suicide prevention. And following that meeting, Patty and I and Bob Rohret and members of his staff and the Veteran Service Officer and our Public Relations Officer all got together. And we had a lengthy discussion about what would be a good way to roll out a suicide prevention program in the county. We made some tentative decisions. Our group is meeting again in February, and of course, everybody's invited to attend, but there's about 5 or 6 of us that will be meeting in mid-February. But very tentatively, we decided we would hold a public forum on the issue in about 2 months, let's just say mid-April or late March. And then we would roll out a school-based program in the fall. Those were tentative decisions based on more information that we're gathering now. And our public relations person has done a great job in putting together some material for us. And we have our own part on the county website to put information. So that's moving ahead. That's all I've got.
Supervisor Hanson. Oh, and then, sorry.
What was it? Bob, could you clarify the date of that meeting before?
You know, I don't have it handy in front of me, Dan, but I'll get it to you soon.
Thank you.
The one that we're going to hold in about 2 weeks. Is that the one you were asking?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if I could just add one more thing. I think it's perfect relative to the earlier discussion with regard to the clerk of court to do what Ken and the committee decided to do, and that's bring it before the admin committee. But it can, perhaps before you do that, when you have something in hand, and I'd be happy to meet with you in about a week or so to work on anything, maybe you could share it with our committee, and we could also, maybe by email, at least comment on it or give you our thoughts on it prior to your bringing it to the admin committee. Would that be appropriate?
No, I'm afraid that would constitute a walking quorum. I mean, I'm happy to share it with you, but you can't discuss it then because that creates a walking quorum.
No, but would you welcome any comment from us? We wouldn't necessarily discuss it internally.
Your comment to me is always welcome, yes.
Okay, well, maybe we could do that. You could share with us what you're going to give to them, and we could give you our feedback. How's that sound?
That is acceptable,
Okay.
yes.
Patty had her light on first.
I just wanted to add the capacity issue. So we have one funeral home right now that has a cooler, and we have no hospitals that have morgues. So when we talk about the capacity, that is where everything comes to. It is all dependent upon us when it comes to storage. And the other thing that we're seeing is we have a lot of people that have lived here for decades that have no family here. So while notification is being made and all this other stuff is being done in the process of death and dying, that's why we have this need for storage. And we're seeing that, I mean, last week we had three within one day that were all scene visits. None of them were from here. None of the families were from here. So we had a lot of work that needed to be done to take care of that before notification could be made. So that is also part of the issue.
Supervisor Hanson?
Thank you. Is that walk-in cooler purpose-built for the business, or is it just a walk-in cooler?
I think it's just a walk-in cooler, and it's not my area of expertise.
Is it a purpose-built walk-in cooler for a medical examiner, or is it a walk-in cooler?
You know, Jim just sent us some specs on it yesterday, so I guess I don't know the answer to that question.
All right. Right now, with all the hospitality industry failures, there is a glut of used equipment on the market, and a lot of it is almost brand new. There's reason to suggest that we look for a used piece of equipment because we could get it much quicker and much cheaper. I know that that's an anathema to our facilities director. However, I would suggest that we make a good faith effort in searching for used equipment. I grew up in the business. My family owned restaurants and catering business, and we bought nothing but used equipment and saved tons of money, and we're able to have a profitable business because of it. And I think it's an excellent idea.
Any other comments?
I know it's white.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll move on to Sheriff's Office update.
Thank you. Our staffing, as I mentioned the other day, or yesterday at County Board, we are still 6 short in the jail. However, we have 2 more that are starting on Sunday that we hope will stay with us and make it through the training program, which would put us at 4. We do have the challenge of gender-specific hirings, and the market for females working in the corrections field is really difficult right now. So we've got 1 or 2 prospective ones that we're looking at. So we're kind of in that area as well for hiring.
Regarding that, so is that like driven by statute, the gender-specific hiring?
If I house a female, I have to have a female on staff. So based upon seniority and shift picks, we have certain female-only shifts, certain male-only shifts, and then kind of a mix of each, so.
And do we have applicants that are not, like, that are outside of that specific gender that we need, that we're not able to hire because of that need, because of the head count and the capacity?
Rephrase the question.
So, like, let's say that you have 6 openings and you need 4 females and 2 males, and you hire 2 males, but you have no applicants for the females. So, but you have 6 applicants and 4 are a good fit, and you'd hire them, but you can't because you don't have the count or the capacity. Is that something you're facing?
Kind of where we're at right now.
Oh, okay. So
we have several male candidates that we could bring on, but because we have open spots, but we have no, but they should be female spots.
okay, so this is all statutorily driven Wisconsin statute, correct?
Well, it's Department of Corrections driven. If we choose not to house females, there's no statute that says I need female. Or if I choose not to house males, I don't need any male staff. So it's really who the county, who we elect to house. But if we elect not to house, then we have to pay to house them in another county.
Okay. All right, thank you. That answers my question. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to get that
So
while you're talking
it's
about
not
it.
necessarily statute driven, but it's Department of Corrections that we have to have a female on. So, back to the days of the matron. And if a female was arrested, then they would call in a female to either do the pat down, do the changeover, and then would have to stay in the jail while the female was there, which, interesting story aside, Jane Jensen, who was worked in the courts for 30 years. She was hired by Charlie Grant in the 60s, and she was, as her obituary said, the first female deputy sheriff in the state of Wisconsin. There was a female that had been brought in, and Charlie Grant needed a female, so he called her up and says, would you like to work? And for the next 89 straight days, she worked. And that was her first hiring here in St. Croix, and stayed with us for 30-some years. So she had just passed away, but they recognized that in her obit. So kind of the beginning of female deputies here in the county as a necessity in order to house females. So patrol-wise, we are 2 down, and posting is ongoing for that. We're getting some really good candidates. We have a 3rd spot open on patrol. She is one that we had just sent through recruit school. She is currently filling a spot in the jail. So when we get up enough staff, which is really close, we're going to be bringing her out on patrol. So it's kind of a mix and match. So many people have helped fit in, worked outside of their division to fill shifts, and it could not be done without the entire staff's commitment and willing to bend and work in areas that they aren't really familiar with working in. So we're very fortunate of that. Some supervisors.
Is the chief deputy occasionally pulling shifts in the jail also?
Kathy avoided night shift for years. For 25 years, she never did a night shift. Kathy has done more night shifts as chief deputy, covering shifts in the jail, than she ever did in 25 years.
I admire your dedication. Thank you, Kathy.
So it's a group effort. Her and Brandy Hart, Sally Standard, Chris Anderson, jail captain. They've been coming in, and Kathy's have been weekend nights. And she says at that age it doesn't work anymore.
That's real leadership by example, and it needs to be recognized.
So we're getting there, and a number of individuals that we've hired in the corrections field have come from a metro county. We had hired one, he put out the word, and all of a sudden we end up getting 5 out of a county that doesn't like us knocking on their door anymore to do backgrounds. So we are taking advantage of the climate of law enforcement in certain areas. The new union contract that has assisted in some of that, making it competitive to some of those counties in the corrections field. And they have to pay for parking over in those areas. They're paying $18, $20, $30, $50 a night to pay parking. I mean, it's, so we're trying to pass along some of those hidden benefits coming here. So we're getting there. Again, as I said a couple months ago when we got rid of 2 problems, we are on the pendulum swing right now, and I'm really happy with the crew we have.
You might remember to mention that the employees of the county get a park pass too, and we have nice parks.
Yes, yes. Anything else on staffing? If not, I'll go into just our jail Huber updates. So currently, as Judge Needham talks about some of the changes in legislation that may impact, currently we're at 102 inmates for our average daily population. 22 of those are on electronic home monitoring. We had gone to electronic home monitoring. Those are the individuals that are Huber eligible, work release eligible. They're currently out of the facility on their electronic home monitorings, being monitored by Sun Monitoring. When we get our staffing up again, we plan on reintroducing, as I mentioned the other day, bringing back Huber as a traditional that we have done here in the past. So there's 80 inmates in the facility now, 102 average daily population, and that includes the 22 that are still in my custody, however not in the facility. As we talk about mental health, I know we just took another individual from the jail that has been in for some time. He was on his way to Mendota today. Still struggling as we talk about mental health needs, mental health beds, state-related. I'm just going to share with you one of the new challenges that we have. I forwarded it to Corporation Counsel the other day. So we had an individual that was intoxicated and suicidal. This person was a 0.3 on his PBT. Winnebago now has a new policy that the individual needs to be 0.00 for 24 hours prior to their accepting. So a person at 0.30, a person processes alcohol in their system on average 0.015 an hour. So for a person to go from 0.3 to 0 is 20 hours. So we make the choice, along with Northwest Connections, to place somebody on an administrative hold, or on a hold, on a Chapter 51 hold. That kicks in the 72 hours of getting them back before the courts. Well, if we're sitting at a hospital for 20 hours, and then we wait another 24 hours, and then we have a 5-hour drive, the math is not adding up anymore. And in order to best serve this person, now Winnebago has their reasons for this policy. I'm sure it's as a result of somebody coming down and, I'm assuming, an alcohol withdrawal or something that put them in a tough spot. But I had forwarded that email to Heather, and I'm not sure how we're going to manage this. So then you add 24 hours and 20, and somebody has to sit there to maintain custody for 40 hours before we even get on the road. It is mind-boggling to me. So I just wanted to share that with, I have no idea where this is going to go. I don't have a time frame of when Eau Claire is going to open up their new beds. I know the funding was approved, when the construction is, if it's just a remodel, if it's a new. I don't have a lot of information on that, but I'd imagine they'll be as sought after from this side of the state as anybody. So I just wanted to share that with you folks as well.
Many challenges.
Many.
Thanks for navigating them all, and to your team. Any questions for the sheriff? My question you answered was about Eau Claire, and I'm hoping that it gets up and running.
You know, and Amory, they're still taking a few as well. So, but yeah, it's becoming that 24 hours is going to be, and I have to clarify, is that any alcohol level? Somebody has one drink, they're a 0.01,
Right.
and then Winnebago says, we got to wait 24 hours? Or is it somebody that's at a certain level or above that triggers the, now we need to wait to ensure that they are, so I have more questions, and that's why I have to confer with Corp Counsel on several things, so.
Okay. Any
Thank you.
questions? Okay. We already addressed number 7, so I think we're at the request for future agenda items.
Yes.
Yeah.
The next public protection meeting, I'd like to know more on the cooler situation. Just, I mean, it's probably an obvious, but I just want to make sure that we talk about it because it does seem very important. And then also with your situation, talking about like just what we threw out here today, I'd like to have that on the agenda to discuss
Yep.
more how we can tackle this.
Staffing
Yep.
in general.
Janet, if you could make that a voting agenda item so that the committee would have the ability to recommend that project if it needs to be moved. No,
The
the cooler
cooler.
item.
Clerk of Courts is, no, Clerk of Courts is.
Yeah,
Admin
that
thing.
needs to happen before your next meeting.
Yep.
But I just wanted to make sure that it became a voting agenda item, so you could actually make a recommendation that it be moved up into 2022 if that's where it looks like it needs to go.
And then I think Supervisor Fiedler isn't on right now, but I would assume he'd want that suicide prevention item as well.
Sure, thank you, Kathy, that'd be great.
Anything else?
I would, if I could entertain the, since the comm van is in, and some are running, some are not, is March a good time for public protection to look at the communications van and get a tour of that?
Yep.
I think that's, I want to
Yep.
make sure that those that worked hard to vote and give us this opportunity are able to tour it and get a good look at it.
That'd be good. Anything else? All right, announcements and correspondence. Nothing? Okay, meeting adjourned, 9:05.